Elevate yourself. Empower others. Welcome to Coach Approach Podcast. Today I'm with Bill Caskey, sales strategist, creator of Advanced Selling Podcast, and someone who has coached B2B sales teams for decades. Bill, I'm building this show around practitioners, not theory, and you got 2000 plus episodes out there, so I'll cut to what matters. So here's the question. What changed in selling and what didn't?
Well, first off,
Yeah.
Marco, I appreciate you inviting me on. We had a great conversation here a couple weeks ago, and I'm looking forward to this. I think it's great when you're starting podcasts, and I always have a soft spot in my heart for people who are new to the profession, new to the genre, and so I wanted to help, and so hopefully I can be of value to your listeners too. I think a lot of what's changed in selling is the flow of information. You know, it used to be, and I don't want to sound like an old man, but it used to be that the customer didn't have much information. It was up to the salesperson. The salesperson had all the market data and all the spec sheets and had all the data. And so you kind of needed a salesperson to come in and work with you if you're a prospect on, kind of how it works. Well, that's not the case anymore. And it's not been the case for 15, 20 years with Google. The salesperson's kind of at a disadvantage because they don't know as much as the prospect does. The prospect goes out and searches on organizations or vendors, and by the time the salesperson shows up, the prospect is 75% of the way down their sales cycle. It's even worse with AI, where now I don't know that I even need a vendor company. I don't know that I need an accountant. I don't know that I need a lawyer. I don't know that some of these professional services companies are really, they're not in a bind right now because we're not there yet. But within the next couple of years, you're going to see people say, why do I'll just have ChatGPT do my taxes. Why do I need to have somebody else do them? So that's the next wave, is that now the salesperson is really on the outside. And I'm going to talk about how they can not be on the outside. But that's one of the things that's changed the most, is the flow of information and who has access to it, who has the proprietary information, and you don't have it anymore if you're in sales.
What you see, what's the most outdated belief you still see?
The most outdated belief is that everything I do to grow my business, I'm talking about if I'm a sales organization, is wrapped up in personal relationships. And I've got to go out and see people. I've got to connect with them. I've got to shake their hand and look them in the eye. And that's just not the way business is done today. Do you need that? Yeah, you still need that. And certain organizations and industries need it more. I'm not saying to not do that. But if you're not online, if you're not digitizing your content and putting assets out there every day, I have a salesperson who's one of 11 in this company that I work with, and he has really taken my disciplines and philosophy to heart. And he does a weekly video show on YouTube, and he's in a business where there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of upheaval and, government regulations and market conditions. And every week he goes live for 15, 20 minutes. Sometimes he interviews people in his company. Sometimes he just does it on his own. And then he sends this out to his email list. Well, guess who the number one salesperson is now in that company? It's him.
Yeah.
Because he rolled up his sleeves and said, look, I want to be different. I don't want to just be calling people up trying to get business. That's awful. It's a terrible way to do business. And so he's created this media platform that he's constantly speaking to these people with value, with things that are going to help them. And guess who they call then when they need help? They call him.
Yeah, it's about trust. Most teams think tools change selling, but you're saying the deeper shift is buyer behavior and relevance.
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah,
Marco, that's exactly right. And buyer behavior has changed, which means we have to change. We don't dictate buyer behavior. The buyer does. So it's like in a sports team, you can have the best laid plans, but you got to get on the field and figure out, what is the defense showing me? What are the people who are trying to keep me from scoring showing me, and how do I navigate that? Then it's the same thing in buyer seller. Is the buyer behavior has changed. We know it, and it's going to continue to change. And we had better be able to navigate that and show up in a way that that causes them to say, man, I'm glad you're here. I want you along on this journey rather than just being reduced to price.
And where do you see the teams playing the old game with those new tools?
Say it again. I'm sorry.
Where are sales teams playing the old game with new tools?
Oh,
You said that guy who is using it. Why everyone's not using it?
yeah, that's a good question because all of his, I mean, just in this guy, his name is Rod. He he has been doing this now for about a year. And you would think that when everybody else sees Rod at the top of the stack rank and knows that he's the top salesperson, wouldn't you think that they would start to emulate him? No, they don't.
Hmm.
That's why I don't think there's any competition at the top. There's no competition at the top because the top is it required Rod in this case to abandon his old beliefs about how selling is done. It required him to to test out this thing before he went to his manager and said, "Look what I'm doing." Because if he would have gone to his manager, although his manager is a lady, she's pretty open, but I still think she would have said, "Rod, come on, man, go make more cold calls. Don't do this video thing. That would be
Hmm.
stupid." So he did a couple of episodes, unbeknownst to her, and he got it polished. And when she saw it, she goes, "Oh my God, that's really good. Yes, go ahead and do it." So you've got to know how to pitch these things, how to present these things internally. But the point is that we're all stuck in our old beliefs. We're all stuck.
Mhm.
The Bible calls them strongholds. We have these old paradigms that we've been running for so long, it becomes hard to get out of it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I recommend to all my clients they need a media platform. They need a podcast, they need a YouTube channel, they need something so they can get their message out and into the world. And a very small percentage of people take advantage because the beliefs are not there.
Yeah, you said great people, average results, and that's brutal reality. So why do talented teams hit a ceiling even when effort is high? I mean, they are doing repetitions, but the strategy is wrong,
Right,
definitely.
right,
And
right.
those old beliefs, how the people can't see the leverage of social media, which is
Well, you
available right now.
that's a good question, and that is the term. And I think we might have talked about this, but I like the term leverage, and we don't leverage enough. I always
Mm.
say that your dream income, let's just say you're earning 100K, whatever denomination currency, and you want to get to 500K, you want to 5x your income. What's between that is leverage. So you will realize closer to your potential as you get better at leveraging your skills, your time, your technology, your wisdom, your client list. I mean, there's a lot of assets that you have. And most people do a miserable job of leveraging their assets. And sometimes when I start talking about, I've got a speech here in about 3 weeks with a company who I know they're a large company. They're not a name brand, but they're very niche oriented, but they're $1 billion company. And that's one of the things the owner or the CEO wants me to talk about is leverage. He said we at this in the CEO level we use leverage every day. My salespeople they do not leverage their time, their
Mhm.
technology, their wisdom. And so if you want to get to a new place in life, a new outcome, income or outcomes, you have to use the simple tool of leverage. And the way you do that is to identify where are your assets. So in your world, I mean, you're starting this podcast. Your asset, number one asset you have is you have an interest in interviewing people. Your ability to interview and get good things out of people will continue to grow. It's already good. It's going to get better. Now you've got this platform, so you can turn that into your personal brand. You can turn it into other things. Maybe other opportunities will come to you. You're serving people. You're establishing an email list at some point. So you're really building assets. But most people don't think of their lives as a series of assets. They think, well, yeah, I solved that problem. Yeah, I solved that $10 million problem, but that was last year. Well, did you document it? Do you have a case study? Did you invest $1,000 in a video on that? Oh no, I would never do that. I mean, everybody can solve that problem. It's BS. It's terrible. And we all do it because we've been taught to be humble. We've been taught to not brag, not be the tall poppy in the field because that'll get cut down. So therefore, we don't even talk about our successes. And I would suggest if you're listening to this and say, okay, I kind of see where he's going, just look at a past client who really got a lot of value out of you, who worked with you, they brought your company in, and their business is transformed or it's changed or it's improved, and go do a case study. Go interview those people, get them on screen, get them on camera talking about the value that you brought and what life is like today and what happened and what life was like before. That's the easiest way, but most people don't even do that because they say, well, I had this happen the other day. I was on a call with a client. They got 8 people. They're engineers, and they also have to sell. And I was recommending, I said, do you guys have any satisfied clients? We just started this program. And they said, oh, my God, our clients love us. We do work for years with clients. I said, well, what kind of video testimonials do you have on your website? And almost in unison, clients would never do that. They would never agree to that. No, they would never agree. And this one guy who's their top salesperson said, guys, not so fast. He said, when's the last time you asked a client to come on video? We never have. We never, or maybe once 20 years ago. Why don't we ask, let them tell us no? Chances are 50% of the people are going to say, sure, I'd love to. I'd love to help you. But that's one way to start in terms of leveraging your asset, because your client work and the experience you have in solving big problems is an asset.
Do you have some strategy or approach to the clients when we ask for a feedback or a case study?
I see. Yeah, I've got just a very simple framework. I not to get into it here, but I was in recovery from alcohol for many. I still am, but I'm sober. Been sober 30, I don't know, 37 years, 36 years, a long time, too long to remember. But when I first came into Alcoholics Anonymous, they would say, go to meetings, go to a meeting every night for 90 days, because you need that kind of momentum to get rid of the bad stuff and get the good stuff in. And I learned something there, that the speakers would always have the same framework. What was life like? What happened? And what's life like today? And in that world, what life was like was pretty bad. What happened was they hit bottom, and what life is like today is I'm sober, I'm happy, I'm joyful, I'm free, I'm spiritual. But it's the same thing in business. If you go into a company and help them solve a problem, the best framework for a testimonial is, what was life like for them? What happened? Maybe they saw an ad, saw a webinar, they reached out, they asked one of their clients and they referred. And what's life like today? Life today is, I'm transformed. My business runs smoother because of Marco and Bill and what they've brought in. So it's a very simple framework that I think works in a lot of testimonials. You can turn that into a 30-minute thing or a 3-minute thing. Does that help?
Yes, it helps a lot. I want to talk about roadmap selling. You've been really direct. Roadmap selling is no longer optional. So, what is roadmap selling in plain language, and why does it win right now?
Roadmap selling and the idea of a roadmap strategy came to me a couple of years ago, when I would see my clients would get all the way to the end of the procedure of the sales process, and they would not get the deal. They would do everything right theoretically, and they would get 25-30% of the deals, which usually most companies get about 15. So they were better than average. But I was bewildered. Well, how do you do all the right things and still only close 30%? Now, chances are they were calling on some people they shouldn't have been calling on. So some of that 70% they shouldn't. But so we came up with this concept of the roadmap. And the roadmap starts when they buy. When the customer buys, that's when the roadmap begins. It doesn't begin on the first call. That's the sales process. And that too is a roadmap of sorts. But the real roadmap is once you agree to do business with me and we agree on the terms and everything, here's what happens. Here's how I'm going to take you to your destination. I think that should be part of the sales process. A lot of times people say, well, they don't get that until after they buy. Well, you're not giving them the solution. You're just telling them the journey they're going to take. And so we have found that closing rates almost double when you use this roadmap strategy sometime later in the sales process. So the way it sounds is, and you have to build your roadmap, that's what we help people do, but the way it sounds is, look, we've talked about X, Y, and Z. You've told me you have issues with this, this, and this. We've talked about budgets. It sounds like you feel like I can help you. I believe I can help you. It sounds like you feel like I can help you. And the prospects, yeah, I think you can. Okay. Is it okay if I share with you what working with us looks like? Is it okay if I share with you the path to get you from where you are to where you want to be? They always say yes, and then you just lay it out. I think you should have a very nicely done visual. Here's one we did. We did for us. I don't know if you can see that or not. I'll get the light off. It's called the 2X roadmap, and it starts down here at the very bottom, and it goes up. And these are the 9 steps that I believe it takes to 2X your business. This is a roadmap. I would bring this out sometime later in the process. Sometimes people say, well, isn't every customer different? Yeah, you can modify. Like if I have a customer that, maybe in step number 5 here, I want to change it, I can change it, but that's a simple cut and paste. I'm not redoing the whole thing because chances are your roadmap will suffice for any client in a specific thing. If you've got several different products, you might have several different roadmaps. But that's where it came, and people love it because, to be honest with you, we've been taught often about this idea of finding the pain, finding the prospect's pain. But I find that that's hard to do today because we're not sitting with people for 4 hours in a meeting. We're talking to one prospect for 15 minutes and somebody else, and they're talking to 4 other vendors. There's no time to take people to therapy and find out their pain. So in lieu of that, I think it's okay to understand what they're trying to accomplish, their objectives, and maybe a little bit of what they're trying to avoid and where they're trying to get. And then come with this, because this is really what they're buying. They're buying this. They're not buying pain. They're buying the solution, which is the roadmap. And so we have found that you can shorten the selling cycle quite a bit if you get clear on the roadmap.
If they see it, they will buy it. We can say also like that.
They'll be more likely to buy.
More likely.
Rather than just trust me. I've got a journey, Mark. I'll take you on a roadmap, Marco, but I'm not going to show it to you. You're going to have to trust me. People don't trust anybody today. They don't trust. So you can either play that game and hope that they start trusting you again. I think trust is going to go down even further. Or you can say, look, if you want to get to this end destination, I've got a plan for you. Do you want to hear it? If you do, this is what it costs. This is what it is. This is how to start. This is how long it's going to take. How can they not decide? Unless you've totally misdiagnosed them and the roadmap you're taking them on has nothing to do with what they want, but that's your problem.
Yeah, that brings us to the next theme I want to discuss, mutual confusion. So you said prospects and sellers often suffer from mutual confusion. Like nobody knows where they are in the process. So how do you detect mutual confusion early? And how do you fix it mid-deal without making it awkward?
Yeah, there was it's mutual confusion, mutual mystification was a trainer came along in the 80s and tabbed at that. Communication is hard for people because as a sales professional or as a vendor of any kind, if you're talking to your prospect, you bring your experience and wisdom and paradigms, and they bring theirs, and you two are trying to figure out things, and you're asking them a lot of questions, and they're not quite sure whether they want to answer those questions or not, so they're not entirely upfront with you, but they're not lying to you. There's a lot of mystification in the communication. The problem is when you don't understand each other and you're talking over or around each other. I had this happen with a client this week. He calls on pretty large organizations selling pretty complex research projects. And the people from my client, and I just started working with them about a month ago, so we're still in the beginning stages, but they think their client understands all of their vernacular and language and lexicon, and they don't, because these people are not in their business. They're in the business of, selling canned fruit. They're not in the business of understanding research and loyalty. And so part of the mutual mystification is my client will go in, or used to go in, they still do because we're not all the way through it yet. They'll go in and they'll pitch something, and the customer will be like, what are they talking about? Then the customer will say, you know what, I think I'll wait on that. Why don't you get back to us in a couple of weeks? I'll run it past some of our people here and see what they think. And then my client says, okay, we got a clear future. I got to call him back in 2 weeks. I think he's a hot prospect. And the prospect in 2 weeks has no idea you were even there. So this whole idea of how do we really demystify communication? And part of the way to do that is when you're in the moment with people, if you don't understand something, be willing and courageous enough to say, you lost me. I was on a call with a CEO, a president of a company, and a little $10 million company, and he was talking to me about bringing me in, working with his team. And he was talking about the things that they needed to have happen and some of their challenges and issues. And he said something I had no idea what he was talking about. It kind of came out of the blue, and I wasn't sure if he had a stroke or had some kind of tic or whatever. But he started talking about something. I said, Thomas, I said, you lost me there. I have no idea. I have no idea where you go. I was following you. I was tracking, and all of a sudden you introduced this, and I lost you. And he looks at me. We were on virtual. He looks at me. He goes, my people never do that. I said, what do you mean? He says, when they don't understand something, they never stop people and say, I don't understand it. He said, if you can come in and help me and my people do that, it will pay for itself, because we get stymied in long sales processes because nobody really knows what each other's doing. It's just it's terrible. So anyway.
Can you share what's the best reset sentence a seller can use? Some example like that.
I think you have to arrive at the conclusion that there needs to be a reset. That's the biggest problem. Once you know there needs to be a reset, the language is pretty simple, but you can be going down a path or a journey with somebody for weeks or months, and you have no idea what you're doing. They have no idea what you're doing. There's total mystification, but you've got to recognize it before you have the you have the chance to say something and to call it. So yeah, can you call it? Yeah, you can say, look, I feel like we're a little off track. I feel like when we first started talking, we were talking about A, B, and C, and now it seems like we're talking about D, E, and F, and I'm not sure if A, B, and C are still important. I'm a little confused, a little lost. Is it okay if we reset, if we take a step back, and I need to get clear on what you want because I'm here for you. And let them tell you, because chances are if you're confused, they're confused. Isn't that true? I mean, anytime they're confused, you're confused, it's probably them too.
Yeah, definitely. And where do sellers accidentally create confusion? I mean, it happens accidentally, right?
It does. It does. I think sellers create confusion when we don't stop and say, well, how is the customer going to see this? We don't put ourselves in the customer's shoes. I know we've always talked about that. Put yourself in your buyer's shoes. Yeah, we talk about it. We don't do it. We don't do it at all. And so, so the first thing is you have to say, okay, I'm getting ready to go in and make this presentation. Let's say I have a slideshow. And let's say that the first 10 slides are all about us, have nothing to do with the customer. Somebody in that room needs to say, guys, these first slides, they're going to be asleep by the time we get to slide 11 if we don't put something in there about them. You've got to have the courage to stand up in your room, because everybody's proud of their stuff. Oh, but we want to put our best foot forward. We want to show people what we can do. Yeah, but they don't care. They don't care. The only thing they care about is, can you do something that's going to help me? So when you're putting together slides or any kind of presentation, you have to always be thinking, What's the customer going to be thinking about? They're looking at this. What are they thinking while they're looking at this? Is this helpful, or is it just us, flapping our jaws?
Yeah, a lot of teams complain like buyers commoditize us. You say that's often self-inflicted. So why do buyers commoditize sellers, and what's the fastest way to stop it?
Yeah, I shot a video a few years ago called "Commanding a Premium," and it's on
Mm.
YouTube. Commanding a premium. It's really about this very thing. It's about how do I command a premium in a world that kind of rewards commodity pricing. So the buyer always wants to get your product at a price less than the competition or less than you say. I mean, there's a downward pressure on pricing always. The customer never would say, "Can we pay you more?" They always say, "Can we pay you less?" and get the same thing. And so there's a natural forcing function toward commodity where your value is discounted in favor of the price. So I've got three vendors. One's 100,000, one's 120, and one's 150. The $150,000 vendor may be the best vendor, and I may get a ton more value out of them. But if they're terrible at communicating their value, it leaves me, the buyer, to say, well, which one's the cheapest? We're going to take the 100 grand one. I can't imagine why anybody would pay 150 when I can get it for 100. But it's different. So you, as a sales professional, as a business owner, need to be mindful of how you communicate that unique value that you bring. Because if you can't communicate it, you're not worth it. I don't care how good you are, you're not going to command a premium. And when you can't command a premium, everything defaults to commodity. So there are lots of things you can do. Your brand has a lot to do with it. Your positioning in the market, like remember I told you about my guy who shoots a video every week. Price doesn't come into it for him because people, by the time they call him, they know he knows what he's talking about because he's in front of them every week with something of value. So he says it's amazing how they don't talk about price anymore. They used to, that's all they talked about was price. Now, just by the time they call me, we don't even, I mean, they may nickel and dime a little bit, but it's not much. But he says it's almost gone away. And nobody believes that, by the way. If you're not doing video, if you're in a price sensitive market, you still believe price is the only thing. It's not, but that's your belief, and that's the way your whole life will be. You'll always believe price is the thing, and it's not. But until you look at your value and say, how do I communicate this better, then you will be in a commodity world.
Is there any sign you already commoditized before the call?
Well, I would always assume, so you're saying that if somebody sets an appointment with you, uh, how do you know you're commoditized? I would always assume you are. I would always assume that because they're probably talking to other people. Sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do. And I would always just assume that that their goal is to get me into a commodity position. And if I start with that as my premise, then I will do the right things in the sales process to get me out of that. If my premise is, oh no, we offer great value and all I got to do is show up and they'll pay it, that's BS. It just won't work. So, and I know we've been taught, oh, you got to have high expectations. Yeah, but they're looking at other people. And if other people in your market are better at communicating the value than you are, they're going to get the deal. And you're going to blame it on price. It has nothing to do with price. So that's the thing that we do is whenever we lose something, we blame it on something that has nothing to do with why we lost it. We do that all. I do that. Sometimes I'll do that. I'll eat terribly, and the next day I'll feel sluggish, and I'll blame it on the weather. That's the weather. It's kind of cloudy in December in the Midwest U.S. No, had to do with I ate too many sweets and too many carbs and not enough fruits and vegetables. That's the problem. But we don't like to look at that because that forces us to be honest with ourselves, and we're not good at that. And so in sales, you do have to be meticulously and rigorously honest with yourself about what's working and what's not working, and take corrective action and not live in your ego. where, oh, it's always them. It's always that prospect, that customer, this marketplace, people today. No, it's you. It's always you.
Yeah, we need to focus more on unique value we bring to the customers. So how we can articulate unique value without sounding like marketing fluff? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um, well, most most companies have something in their offer. By offer, I mean solution. Have something that is unique and is special, and is kind of maybe the thing that you've become known for. Like in my world, um, the thing I've kind of become known for, the people who follow me, is how important mindset is in your mission, in growing your business. And if your mind is not right, then all the mechanics are not right. And so I've kind of become, I've got 5 different mindsets that I teach people. And so that's kind of, so when I talk to a person, I talk to a prospect, I will always start with my proclamation that, look, here's what I believe about selling and results. Everybody wants more results, but most people aren't willing to think the thoughts required to do the actions to get the results. They're not willing to think about it differently so they can act differently, so they can achieve differently. And until we change the thinking of your sales team, then no amount of actions are really going to get you to the next level. And in the West, in the Western world, we typically think, well, if I want more, I just got to do more. And I say,
Mhm.
no, if you want more, you can do less, but you got to think more. You got to think more about, well, how am I going to market? Is this really the best thing? So I think we just, it's kind of the old, how you think determines how you act, and how you act determines your results.
Yes, the mindset is really a big one. What happens before the call matters more than a call. I mean, I'm from sports, so I know the importance of preparation.
Yeah.
And you said something like call conduct is table stakes. The real game is before the call. And I agree definitely on that. What are the like 3 pre-call assets or signals that create authority? Or how to prepare to call?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I do believe that we have put undue emphasis on how we conduct ourselves in the sales call. So we're talking about, well, what questions do you ask, and how do you handle that objection, and how do you close, and how do you develop the next step, and all that stuff. That's all sales conduct. I'm not saying it's not important. It is, but if my mind is not right, my conduct's not going to be right. I'm going to look and sound desperate. I'm going to I'm going to miss things because I'm too anxious to get to what I want to talk about, to listen to the prospect's problem or where they want to go. So I believe that there's a lot that happens before the actual sales call, which is where your conduct comes in, what I call call conduct. It has to do with planning. It has to do with your mindset. It has to do with your positioning. Are you positioning yourself well before the call? I when somebody reads a book, I've got a book here called 12 Bold Moves. I don't think you can see it. It's over there. 12 Bold Moves. And I want your people to get a copy of that. So if you go to 12boldmoves.com/audiobook, you will get a free, it's about a 45-minute tutorial. But when somebody reads that book, I had a guy here about 2 months ago, he read the book and he listened to the audio and he said, hey, I want you to come in and work with me. And it wasn't like, how much is it? What are you going to do? It was none of that. It was just because I was positioned in his mind properly up front. I'm not saying you need to write a book. I'm saying you need to develop some kind of asset so that before a call, you can send this prospect this asset. And by the time you get there, they're pre-sold. They're pre-sold on
Yeah.
you. Now, I don't mean they're going to cut a check that day, but they're starting to become familiar with you and understand what you do and why you do it and how you do it and who you are. And we just don't do enough of that. We think, oh, we're good enough. We can just show up for this call and we'll kick some butt. We'll just do it that way. And you're giving up. You're putting too much emphasis on the call conduct and not enough on things that happen before the call actually takes place. Same thing with after. I believe that a lot of times when you're in a meeting with a potential customer, and maybe there's two or three of them, and somebody misses the meeting, somebody on their team misses, so they're supposed to be there, but they weren't there. You've got to create some kind of video follow up for them. You've got to shoot a video where you say, I'm sorry you missed. I shot this video because I wanted you to be up to speed on what we talked about. Here's what we talked about, 5 things. Here's our next step. If you have any questions, please call. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. We send them an email. And you know how many, people read emails? They're not going to read that email. They didn't think enough to even come to the call. So what makes you think they're going to read your email? So we don't, that's what I mean by all the things around, the things that surround. It's almost like the backstage stuff. The front stage stuff is you. You're on stage. You're in the moment. You're talking to people. But it's all the backstage stuff that's the important part.
Yeah, like a quick Loom video, 1 minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes will be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. You said complex deals don't close through charm anymore. They close through orchestration. Can you tell me what does orchestration actually look like in a real deal?
When I look at the skills that business to business salespeople need to embrace in the future, I think there are 7 to 10 of them. In fact, I did a webinar here a few weeks ago on the 7 that I think are the most important. And one of those 7 is orchestration or choreography, where you, as a sales professional or business owner, are the one that has to choreograph the customer and your team and them and where they are in the process and the right. You have to direct the movie, and most people aren't very good at that. And when you're not good at it, then you will always be a hostage to your customer. Because your customer will then they'll feel like, well, I got to direct this movie, so we're going to meet next Thursday at 8, and no, my CEO's not going to be there. Because if you're choreographing that, you would say, oh yeah, your CEO has to be there. All your decision makers have to be there, prospective creators or whatever. So if you're not choreographing, somebody else is, and it's usually the prospect, and they don't have your best interest in mind. So I think orchestration is a skill of they've always had to have it, especially in complex sales where there's lots of loose ends and lots of people and complex sales that maybe last 90 days. It takes 90 days to close. I had a meeting with a lady here a couple months ago. We did about 3 months worth of work for her, she and her team. And she called me because she got referred by the president of the company to me. And so I know he's a supporter of ours. But as we started to talk, I said, I think I'm going to reach out to Daniel, if it's okay with you, and just reconnect. She goes, oh, that'd be great. So now I call Daniel. We have a nice conversation. He said, where are you on this thing? And I said, well, I think we're good, but if you wouldn't mind. He goes, oh no, I'll talk to her. And sure enough, boom, a couple weeks later, we were off. But I could have decided not to call Daniel, but that wouldn't have been an orchestration. That wouldn't have been a good orchestrator. Orchestrating is like making sure when there's people around the decision process, you're in touch with them.
A lot of your work is really coaching, mindset plus mechanics. When you coach sellers, what resistance shows up most and what breaks it?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I've got about 5 more minutes here, so I've got to run. So I want to make sure I answer this question and fully. That's a good question, and because coaching is one of those things. When I was coming up through the ranks, there was no such thing as a coach. The only coach was a sports coach, and there was no, if you struggled, you need a coach. There was none of that. Today, there's a coach for everything. They're on every street corner. But I do think that coaching, and it doesn't have to be me that you hire, obviously, but I think a coach is worth his weight or her weight in gold, because they will hold you accountable. They will ask you questions that no one in your life is asking you. That's one thing that, when I first start working with somebody, I'll ask them a lot of questions about why they want to do a certain thing and what's in it for them and what they're, what's really driving this. And I always get, Bill, no one ever asks me these questions. And it's in a positive way. Nobody ever, and it's not that they don't care. Your spouse doesn't know how to ask those questions. Your pastor doesn't. Your boss doesn't. So I think that the idea of a coach coming in and really excavating what's really going on here. What are we trying to accomplish? Where are you trying to get? Why are you trying to get there? And then holding people accountable on the path to that, developing a roadmap, and then holding people accountable on that roadmap is really critical. But I know a lot of people, they don't want to pay for coaching. I've got a guy that pays me, I think, $3K a month for coaching. We meet 3 times a month for 45 minutes, and he's taken his income in the last year from $350 to about $650. So he's almost doubled his income. And we were getting ready to talk about coaching for this next year. I said, what are we going to do? Are we going to continue? You're going to stop? He goes, stop. I spent $35,000 with you and I earned an extra 300 grand. Why would I stop that? But most people don't have that. They're like $3 grand a month. What are you talking about? I can't. But he's in a fast growth mode. He has high upside potential. This guy is, I mean, if I could clone what he does and how he takes the information and goes and works it, he does quite well. Anyway, coaching I think is important. And if you're trying to go from 100 grand to 110 grand, you don't need a coach. You just need to shore up some things. But if you're trying to really level up, get to an entirely different level where you almost have to become somebody different at that next level, that's where a coach is worth his weight. But you got to find somebody that really knows how to get you there too. And most coaches aren't that good at that. But there are some out there. But the trouble is that if you try to get a $200 a month coach, you're not going to get a very good one. So, but I would highly recommend you consider a coach for the next, and do it on a 90-day. I wouldn't hire a coach for a year. I would do it 90 days at a time. You know in 90 days whether the coach is the right thing for you.
Bill, thank you for your time. This was pure gold. Where should people go to connect with you for the end?
Thanks, Marco. I appreciate it. And I enjoyed your questions. You have good vibe, your questions. You can go to billcaskey.com. We have webinars that we run from time to time, and you can go get information there. Bill Caskey, CASKEY.com. I'm also on LinkedIn at Bill Caskey, and those 2 places are probably the best. And you can get access to the podcasts there and also the YouTube channel. So I really appreciate you having me on your show, Marco. It's been great.
Bill, thanks for helping me and helping the people who are trying to level up.
Awesome. See you next time.
Elevate yourself. Empower others. Welcome to Coach Approach Podcast.